Hey guys, Keith here from Word Walkers, and welcome to another episode of Current Events in Biblical Times. And in today's subject, we're going to be looking at, is the world moving to a one world economic structure and earthquakes in various places? And today's scripture is going to come out of Revelation chapter 13, and starting in verse 16 we read, "And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, that no one," now verse 17 is key, "that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who understands and has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of man. His number is 666. So, here we are in the book of Revelation, the apocalyptic book, and we find a time where there is a one world economic structure. And we kind of touched on this a little bit in the prophecy studies, where there's a mark on your right hand and a mark on your forehead that signifies kind of who you're following and who you're going after and who you believe in. But is there a movement right now? Is this proving itself to be true in today's economy? And this report right here came out, and by the way, if you're watching this right now on the Facebook group, head on over to the YouTube channel. Make sure you click like and subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit that little bell notification, and every time we upload a video, you'll be the first to know. And if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, make sure you head on over, click the link down in the description below, and head on over to the Facebook group and become part of a growing community of believers who are looking for the return of Jesus Christ and studying God's Word in today's times. So, with that being said, this report came out on Thursday morning, from the Federal Reserve. And here's the title of the article. It says, "Federal Reserve announces the establishment of temporary U.S. dollar liquidity arrangements with other central banks." And so what that means is other central banks from around the globe are coming to the United States' Federal Reserve Bank to do loans with, because the dollar right now seems to be a high value commodity over other denominations of money from other countries. So in other words, the dollar is worth more than theirs. And so what they're doing is they're coming to swap currencies as a loan in order to float their economies during times of stress and market downturns. So let me just kind of read a little bit of this article, and we'll kind of piece it together here as we go through it. Now, first and foremost, what's very interesting is that there are 14 countries right now doing business with the United States Federal Reserve Bank. And some of those that were added here this Thursday were to the tune, now here's the deal, these countries are borrowing $60 billion a pop. So in the amount of $60 billion, each of the following reserve banks borrowed this amount of money: Australia, Brazil, Korea, Mexico, Singapore, and Sweden. They all borrowed $60 billion apiece, whereas these two banks borrowed $30 billion, and that is the Bank of the Denmarks and the Reserve Bank of New Zealand. So that's also on top of the country, some of the other countries that they're already doing business with. For instance, the Bank of Canada, the Bank of England, the Bank of Japan, the European Central Bank, and the Swiss National Bank. So there's some pretty big market players borrowing from the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank. Now this is important, and it's why I have this up on the screen. Now that's the U.S. debt clock, but in this website there's also links to the world debt clock and other nations' monetary debts. Now that's important because right now, that's the U.S. debt clock, and right now we owe the Federal Reserve Bank $23 trillion. And down at the bottom of that, when you look at it, down towards the bottom of it, there's a little thing that says what you owe as an individual. You know that I currently owe, and you currently owe other countries $400,000 apiece? That is nuts. I've never had that much money at one time in my life, and yet that's where we are. So let me just read this real quick. Who authorized these swaps? Now this is where it gets very, very important and interesting. So who authorized these swaps? And this is also part of the report. It's in the Q&A section of the report. It says, the establishment of these arrangements was authorized by the Federal Open Market Committee of the Federal Reserve System and the policy boards of executives of the respective foreign central banks. In addition, the Federal Reserve had the right to approve or deny requests by foreign central banks to draw on their swap lines. Now, did you see that? Our government has nothing to do with this. Let me give you some context here about the Federal Reserve. And if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, down in the description below there will be a link to go to the Word Walkers Facebook group. Click that link, join the group, and there are 3 videos that I shared on that Facebook group about the Federal Reserve Bank. And some of that stuff is eye-opening, to say the least. The Federal Reserve Bank is not a federal entity. It's not a government entity. It's not a government branch. It's not a government nothing. It is a privately owned bank that is separate from everything that our government chooses to do business with. And at any given time, that bank can decide it's time for me to take my money back. It's time for me to call my loans. So let me just kind of go through. I know that maybe it's like, but the Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express is. Okay, it's not. It's a privately owned bank that our country owes $23 trillion to. And that as individual American citizens, we each are in tow $408,000 to. That's how crazy this is. So, one of the other questions that was asked that I thought of and was in the frequently asked questions in this report is the Federal Reserve exposed to foreign exchange or private bank risk in extending these lines? And the immediate answer is no. Dollars provided through the U.S. dollar liquidity swaps are provided by the Federal Reserve to foreign central banks. Okay, it's just another, central bank is just another way of saying they're Federal Reserve. So our central bank is the Federal Reserve. These other banks, these other Federal Reserves, that's their central banks. It's just another way of saying it. Don't get that confused. Okay, so they give the money to the government bank. Don't say government. They give their money to the Federal Reserve Bank in the other country, not to the institutions obtaining the funding in these operations. Do you see the separation there? So one big shot to the other big shot, and then they determine what they're going to do with it. So, example, in our country, Boeing wants a bailout right now. That's the obvious one in front of all of us. Boeing wants a bailout. So, do they get the bailout from the Federal Reserve Bank? No. They get the bailout from our government to the tune of however many billions they need or they want. And with that, the government gives them the money, and then they pay back. Then the Boeing pays that back in the form of an interest loan, right? So now, here's what happens. Let's say the Federal Reserve in America, that bank, says, you know what, I need my money back. Or as a drastic end result, we have all these other countries now that are taking loans from this bank, from this Federal Reserve Bank. So it's as if all this maneuvering and shifting is starting to happen, and the big dog is being pushed to the top, and then he becomes the bank of the world, or the global economic structure. Now, you tie that in to what's happening across the globe, right? Small businesses are shutting down because coronavirus. Big businesses are closing for months at a time to clean and to disinfect. We're told to be socially distant. We're told to stay home. We're told to do all this stuff. Everything comes to a crawl. The markets crashed and are crashing. My wife and I own a small business on the side that we just did our last client visit on Tuesday. We have nothing because everyone's at home. and no one needs our services after that. So that's happening everywhere. Now, and then everything that's in here, the paper money that comes out. So now our government says, well, we're going to help the people. We're going to give you all a check, right? At least that's what's being floated right now. And that just adds even more to the debt. So now, in a drastic example, let's say the bank finally says, you know what, I'm the top dog. I want all my money back. And the only way you're going to do this is if I'm going to take it all. And they take it all. Everything flatlines. And then they call the shots. See, these banks, look, our government is owned $23 trillion. That bank can do whatever it wants, and we can't do nothing about it. We're indebted to them. And because of that, you have this one world economic structure starting to come into play. Now, could that happen? Could there be like a massive just, you know what, I'm done, give me the money back? Well, it kind of happened in the 30s with the Great Depression, where they called back all of those low interest bond rates and those low interest stock market exchange stocks. They sold them at low interest rate, and then they dumped a ton of interest back on them, and then everybody went broke, and that's what happened when they tried to do the sell-off. And that's what happened, what caused the Great Depression. So that's kind of what could happen again, only this could be at a global scale. So we are already seeing money being borrowed from 14 or 15 United Nations countries from one Federal Reserve Bank, and that just leads one thing to another, and we all know how debt works. All debt is based on interest, and interest just adds to the debt, and then it becomes so high that it can't be repaid. And then we end up all owing the same banking system, the same denomination, and that's how you can end up in a one world economic structure. So now let's turn the page here, and I know we're going to talk about earthquakes in various places, right? So go back to Matthew 24 real quick. Matthew 24, same place we were last week. Matthew 24, verses 4 through 9. Take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Again, I ask the question from verse 9. Who is the they there? Who is it? So, interesting phenomenon that took place this week, again, was an earthquake in the state of Utah. In Utah, of all places. And you know what? It shook the foundations of one of the false religions of the globe, the Church of Latter-day Saints. And it actually knocked the trumpet off of the arm off of the angel or whatever that thing is that sits at the top of their temple off. As if symbolically God was saying, nah, you're not blowing your trumpet anymore. And thought that was just incredible. But then it got me thinking, earthquakes in various places, right? So I did some research, and that's what's on this screen. And there'll be a link to that down in the description below. It's called earthquaketrack.com. And just some quick facts here. Over the last 2.5 months, there have been 24 earthquakes in various places all around the globe. And you can put the numbers in there, the analytics in yourself. I want 6.0. How many in the last 2.5 months? 24 in various places. That's a lot of earthquakes. That's a lot of significant earthquakes, guys. A lot of them. So yes, we're seeing things happening right in front of us. Right in front of us. So what do? How do we get ourselves set up for this? Number one, the Bible teaches us that we have not been given the spirit of fear or timidity, but of a sound mind and of a good spirit. Okay? Sound mind and a good spirit. When you start to feel a little overwhelmed, take a breath. Take a breath, get on your knees, and pray. Seek God. The Bible teaches us that if His people who are called by His name humble ourselves and pray and seek His face, He will hear us and He will answer our prayers. Guys, until we see each other again, keep looking up, because he's on his way. Get prepared. Take care of your families. Take care of yourself. Be spiritually ready so that this doesn't overtake you. And until the next time we meet, guys, peace.